Good afternoon, everyone. I just got the high sign to get us started today. And so on behalf of St. Louis Community College, and especially the faculty, staff, and students of our Forest Park campus, we want to welcome you here today to the human impact of AI in higher education. We are super honored that you chose to spend your afternoon with us, so thank you for being here today. Across our region, each of our institutions has been wrestling with the very same urgent question. How do we harness the power of artificial intelligence while strengthening the very human mission at the heart of higher education? STLCC's answer is simple. Let's get everyone and bring them to the table, literally. And so today we have experts from Lindenwood University, Maryville University, St. Louis University, Washington University, Webster University, and St. Louis Community College that will be sharing emerging practices, provocative questions, as we chart the future none of us can or should tackle alone. So why a mini conference? Because agility matters. AI is sprinting ahead, and our students can't wait for that perfect white paper to come out. They need us to learn together, to iterate quickly, and to build guardrails that keep equity, ethics, and opportunity at the center. Over the next 2.5 hours, you'll engage with thought leaders who will explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping the human dimensions of higher education. Most importantly, you'll have space to question, to challenge, and imagine alongside colleagues who share your passion for students and for the learning that remains irreducibly human. Before we begin, I need to say a couple of thank yous. I want to thank Dr. Sahar, Joakim, and I know I butcher that every time, I'm sorry, who has put this all together. This is amazing. So thank you so much, Sahar, for your hard work on this. As you can see, we have a lot of technology going in the room today as well. So thank you to our IT team who is phenomenal. They're just so great at making these kinds of events happen. And of course, to our housekeeping staff and to our food service who have provided all the refreshments and made sure this room was set up. So thank you to all of those folks. At any time, feel free to get up, get refreshments, help yourself. If you need a restroom, go out the door, down the hall, and to your left. And again, I just want to welcome you to Forest Park. And let's make the next few hours a model of collaborative, courageous, and compassionate higher education in our region and what our world deserves. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Fickus, and thank you to all of you audience members for coming here to have this collaborative, courageous conversation all together. I want to reiterate some things, which is a huge thank you to Chef Tony, who provided the food, but also to PJ and his team for the tech, and to the AI Governance Committee, without whom this would be very impossible. Renita Luck, who is our Associate Vice Chancellor for District Learning and Academic Support, is on the panel, so if we can give a round of applause to Renita. It is with her support that this vision is brought to you today. And a few extra things here, because Dr. Fickus stole a few of my jokes and what I was going to say. I want to invite you to think along with me. The imagery that you see that Jill from our marketing team created is it's a spiral. And it's not a circle, it's not circular, thank you so much. It's a spiral. It's supposed to help us think about the ways in which disruptive technologies continuously pop up and send us pivoting and adapting and integrating the new technologies. And one thing that's helping us to do is to think about this book, Who Moved My Cheese, which all of the panelists have in front of them as a very, very small thank you from Renita's office. The Who Moved My Cheese book is a sort of timeless advice for people to continuously think about the new goal and the new way to get to the new goal, the cheese, if you will, student success, perhaps. Another thing I would like to note is Each one of these panelists has a CV that is so long it would take up half of our time here today if I was going to actually introduce them in a way that gave them any justice. They're very long careers. So what I invite you to do is to use the fact that you have their name and title in school in front of you. It's on the screen for those of you who are watching later as they speak, and just Google them or ChatGPT them or whatever is the cool new way to say look them up, and you will be able to do kind of a flipped classroom. What I want to do with the time that we have today is just listen to their views. And so I am going to call upon each one of them one by one to answer a question that is specifically about humans in this question of AI. There are so many different ways that we can think about artificial intelligence. As an associate professor of philosophy, my question would be, what is intelligence in the first place, let alone artificial intelligence? We're going to ignore anything that doesn't have to do with putting people first. And those are all of the questions that are coming up right now. We're going to hear them give a 5-minute response, and each panelist will be able to add something if they feel they absolutely need to. They've all been told that they can answer at least one other person's question in 60 seconds or less. And then after the panelists are done with their presentations, I'll be inviting Jeff Pittman, our chancellor of St. Louis Community College, to give some reflections. He will send everyone into a 10-minute break, and then if you can flip over the timeline that's printed out in front of you, you will see where the panelists are going to resume after the break. Each panelist is going to be in a very small, more private, intimate room where you'll be able to speak with them one-on-one. And then after those small group discussions, we'll come back in here and we will share what happened in our more intimate settings where we had one-on-one conversations. And then after a big regroup, we'll be sent home by 4:30. So I invite you to remember that we are leaving before traffic really gets going. I invite you to silence your phones and to close all the tabs that are open in your mind right now and to truly be present, because you coming here shows that you've invested your most valuable asset, which is your time. And I truly invite you to be here and to think about how artificial intelligence is treating humans and like where are we in all of this. All right, let's kick it off. And so our first question will go to W. Travis McMacken, who is the dean at Lindenwood University. And here is his question. You have it all in front of you inside of the flap. How should higher education redefine the purpose of college learning in an AI-mediated world? Travis?
Thank you so much for the introduction. Every major technology in human history has forced education to redefine itself. The codex replaced memory-based oral traditions with literacy. The chalkboard helped standardize instruction under the demands of industrialization. The calculator shifted math education from computation to problem solving. Each of these shifts didn't just change how we taught, it changed what we believed was worth teaching. My colleague James Hudson and I, along with our provost at Lindenwood, Kathy Vasovich, laid out this argument in late 2024 in an article entitled "From Codex to Code, Pedagogical Transformations in the Age of Technological Innovation." Generative AI is the latest chapter in that story, and the speed of acceleration has been disorienting. Tasks that we spent years training students to perform, tasks like drafting reports, analyzing data sets, and even writing code, those tasks can now be completed in seconds. So, if AI can produce outputs analogous to what we've traditionally tested students on, regardless of what we think about the quality or originality of those outputs, we have to ask ourselves the critical question: what is higher education actually for? Facing this question head-on in the age of generative AI should lead us to neither panic and despair nor denial. It should lead us to get serious about what humans do that these applications don't and can't do, and to build our curricula around those capabilities deliberately and transparently. In the College of Arts and Humanities at Lindenwood University, we call these irreducibly human skills power skills. These are the durable, transferable, in-demand, and deeply human capabilities that underpin not only success in any career, but also success in building a meaningful life. These are skills like critical thinking, ethical reasoning, empathy, creative problem solving, effective communication, and adaptability. And as we say in a statement that appears on all the syllabi in our college, these are, quote, all things that a robot cannot do, end quote. This is not just an arts and humanities cheerleading routine. Now that many routine functions are automatable, complex decision-making, ethical reasoning, and interpersonal communication are becoming more valuable. The skills employers report struggling to find are exactly the ones that a liberal arts education develops. Report after report from employers confirms this. Rolling Stone even published an article on the topic within the last month. What makes our approach distinctive is that we don't treat AI and the liberal arts as somehow opposed to one another. For example, our College of Arts and Humanities houses our human-centered AI programs, and we're launching a new applied AI program this fall. Our students don't just learn to use AI tools, they learn to evaluate them, to recognize bias in their outputs, and to make ethical judgments about when and how to deploy them. So, how should higher education redefine the purpose of college learning in an AI-mediated world? Our job is to develop the human judgment, ethical awareness, creative capacity, and relational intelligence that allow people to use the information and tools at their fingertips wisely and effectively and hopefully to change the world for the better. And for what it's worth, this is actually more difficult and more rigorous than models of education that have focused on lower order cognitive development, such as memorization or recall. Every technological revolution in education has asked the same question. What do humans need to be able to do now? If we take that question seriously, the path forward isn't about competing with machines. It's about developing the irreducibly human capacities that make the machines worth using in the first place. Thank you.
Perfect timing. And now we turn to James Hudson. It's not a typo. He really does have 2 PhDs, who's a professor in Lindenwood University. And his question is the following. What competencies, technical and not technical, should all students, regardless of major, develop to thrive in an AI-shaped workforce?
Obviously, my dean answered quite a bit of that already, but we'll go into the data and the main thesis that I always have, which is if we're actually going to serve students, we have to stop guarding our silos and stop bright lining as to what technology can and can't do and start actually looking at what the reality is that we're already faced with. So the first question I always have is going to be, how many in here have used any AI tool ever? Okay. How many pay at least $20 a month for a Plus subscription? How many pay $100 or $200 a month for a Pro subscription? Okay, exactly. So it's 0.04% of the global population uses Pro tools, meaning that the majority of the population doesn't know what the tools can actually do now. Right, so that's step one as far as the frontier models are concerned in in that. So there are more PhDs in the world than there are people that use pro models and the frontier models. So if you want to think about that, it's pretty rare. Which means that the majority of educators and those making decisions in curricula don't actually know what can be done at this moment. That's the first thing we always say, and we can discuss the ethics associated with it. I always found it unethical when we started discussing this in 2023 to state that we shouldn't be telling students that they're walking towards a cliff, right? Quite literally. So without preparing them, without showing them that some of the skills that they were learning are currently automatable and will certainly be outmoded by that time, we need to take that into consideration and then move forward from there without bright lining, right? So that's the main focus we always have. And there's also a main misunderstanding when it comes to the type of skills. Obviously, we know that there's a misconception when it comes to basic big data and AI literacy. That's kind of the top one cited by the World Economic Forum that shot up. But you don't need a lot of technical skills in order to teach students that anymore. anymore. You need to teach them how to think through problem solving and how these things work, and frameworks, or what I call habits of mind for each discipline, right? And so you don't have to know, I mean, if you know Python, great, right? So if you know how to debug, great. But knowing programming logic and the structure of how to think that way as a programmer, that's more important. In the same way as if you're a physician, a dental hygienist, it doesn't matter what you are, right? What is the systems that we're thinking of there? So, so to kind of reverse engineer that, we already know, and we can see coming into focus what's actually happening with the economy. Everyone's following this. Everyone's looking at jobs reports. And so we already know that since 2023, AI literacy shot up as a skill on LinkedIn 140%, right? Faster than any other skill, right, that ever existed. But we also saw a decline in the value of basic reading and writing and manual dexterity. We saw a skyrocketing in the need, a 58% actually increase for creative thinking, right? So, and we actually had a very controversial AI scholar the other day state that there's going to be, two people that actually survive moving forward, and one are going to be those that are neurodivergent and can think outside the box, and the other is going to be those with skilled trades. They work with their hands, which is that's very binary, but there's some truth in that as far as thinking, beyond what AI can possibly do. So the last thing which I'll leave with, because we have lots of discussion, would be the threat of AI in job displacement. There's a major misconception of we're going to create, over 100 million jobs, or we're going to lose over 90 million jobs. We'll have a 7% increase so far, at the end. But what's not understood is it's 39% of all of us that will have to augment, right, an additional skill on top of and layer it on top of what we already know. It's, that's 60% of us will have to do that. It's the 39% which will have to learn an entirely new skill, right, in that way. And so, so with that, I will turn it over, but also kind of thinking about the future of an AI-driven workforce is if you don't know what the machines can currently do and forecast where they're going, so if you don't have an agent running right now making something for you at home or in your pocket, you need to be doing that. So then it's impossible really to know how to prepare students and what the learning outcome should be. Thank you.
I'd like to remind everyone in the audience at any point, please help yourself to the refreshments. This is an informal event where you feel free to get up and move around. We're next turning to Mike Holmes, who, if you look up, you will not understand from his title all of the experience that he has with AI. He is IT services at St. Louis University, but does so much more. Very large job description there. Mike's question is the following. What collaborative models between IT, academic units, and administration are most effective for implementing AI responsibly at scale?
All right, thank you for coming today. So this is something that I live every day. Obviously, AI has infused everything in technology, and so trying to build a strategy and a plan for implementing it and scaling it is a challenge. To a certain degree, though, implementing any new technology is similar, right? What's so different, I think, for AI for most of us is a lot of people don't understand it, and it's also changing everything. So it's not just a small change in one area, it is impacting lots of different ways that people work and interact and do their jobs. So as I thought about this question, it mentions three areas. And so I think that the key thing is identifying the roles that each of those groups have and making sure that everyone understands their role and then can contribute towards that. So in an ideal world, right, the administration would gather information, and they would basically provide the guidelines, the guardrails, and the guiding principles. So this is how the institution intends to use AI. Here are some places where we don't want to use it for ethical reasons or other reasons, but they sort of provide that framework. IT can then develop a secure platform that provides those guardrails, but also gives faculty, staff, the ability to play and try things. And then the third piece in the academic units, this is really where the use cases should come from, right? So faculty are in the classroom, they're working with students, they have ideas for how to implement AI, to impact their education, the students' outcomes, those sorts of things. It really takes sort of all of those roles together to sort of provide an infrastructure to do that. The decision making then needs to be kind of across those groups and collaborative, right? So while the administration has sort of posed those guidelines, here are the guardrails, then each of the faculty working with IT or on their own in that environment, we know it's a secured environment, their data is not going to leak out, the student or faculty and student intellectual property is safe and secure. It really gives faculty and others the ability to do some pilots. One of the things we all know with AI, as many people have mentioned, right, is it's always changing. If you wait to find the perfect product or to develop the perfect plan, it's already moved. And so you have to be willing to do pilots, and if you're going to fail, fail fast, right? So acknowledging that you can fail, and then you move on to the next thing. In this environment, if you have those goalposts and those guide frames around it, you can then do those innovative things in that environment, and then when you find things that work, we can scale it. So some of the things we've been doing at SLU is looking with different individual schools and departments to try to help them adopt for their classes, and then when we find things that work, we can then look at ways to expand that. I think some of the challenges in academia is that not all domains are as open to using AI in the classroom as others. I think we would all recognize that. So there are some obvious places to use it, and maybe there are some that are less obvious. So some of the things that we're working with is, again, with faculty, is we're trying to find different use cases where we can develop things that are more acceptable or kind of get them into that will lead them into learning more and expanding it. So I guess the overall approach is to responsibly roll it out, everyone needs to know their role and to build that platform in that environment where you can innovate and you have that safety around it, but then you can expand it as you need to.
Thank you. I imagine no one has a follow-up, is that right? Because you'll just hold your hand up if you do? Perfect. Okay. Our next answer is coming from Jackson Nickerson, who is the Dean at the School of Business at St. Louis University, and his question is the following. How can colleges and universities create innovation ecosystems that support experimentation with AI while still ensuring security guardrails and ethical guardrails?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you for letting me go after Mike, because I'm the one that gives him a hard time. Before I get going, I want to give a gift to all the attendees. Last summer, I wrote a book, made it available free online. It's about how to use AI to support human formation. We often think about it in terms of efficiencies. So if you go and search "With a Bot and a Prayer," you can download the book for free. You'll find it a very different take on AI. Well, let me get back to the issues at hand. Mike described the perfect situation. The university establishes a policy. It allocates a budget to IT to create an environment which is safe and secure. It turns to the schools and the faculty then to use that environment. That's not how it works, is it? That is not how it works. So what I want to share with you is some of the secrets to how you can create an ecosystem. It's important, I think, for the deans to be key players here because they have resources. They also can engage in negotiations and moderate some of the discussion. My belief is that you should always move with an eye towards the future and towards the entire institution, not just for the school. The first thing that I believe you should do is find opportunities to experiment and negotiate pilots that allow you to move forward, even when policies have not been made. But move forward by first making a partner with your best friends over at IT. You don't want to do it independently. You want them to be aware of what's going on so they can help manage the risks. If you're not trying to manage the risks can shut down the ecosystem right away. So develop partnerships. Second, you have to understand what impedes IT. It's called budget. And AI is expensive, It not only has a fixed cost and a variable cost. So if you want to create an ecosystem, what you must do is find a way to solve IT's problem, which is having a budget, which requires additional resources that often come outside of the budget. So the second thing is budget. The third thing one has to do is spark the faculty to go crazy. Now, sometimes, as a dean, I launched a project without the faculty, but launched simultaneous projects with the faculty to spur their thinking to bring forth additional opportunities. Our first pilot was expensive. Didn't work. We pulled the plug. But during that time, it sparked a bunch of faculty innovations in terms of AI products that would help with education. And frankly, we then took a different approach where we're piloting an internal platform based on Azure. You don't need to know all the details, but we're now programming up our faculty's programs. In order to get that to continue, the budget goes up a new notch. So now we have to come up with another solution for budget. So let me come back to budget again. So the third one is trying to spark faculty, but the fourth one is always thinking about how you solve other people's problems in order to support the ecosystem. Eventually, I certainly hope the provost and the president will take over that responsibility. But until we move far enough down the line in this innovative ecosystem, then the deans have to help fill that gap. Agility, which our speaker announced, is really quite vital here. The final thing I'll mention in terms of the ecosystem is you just can't sit back and let it operate. An ecosystem requires an architect who's going to continue to provide support, whether it's for IT, for the faculty, to raise the issue with the provost, the president, even the board of trustees. You need to have that entrepreneur who's going to architect the system in order for the ecosystem to progress forward. I think deans are in a perfect role for this, particularly early on in the life cycle. Let me stop there and thank my partner, Mike, because he's been wonderful in helping to create an innovation ecosystem that, frankly, hasn't slowed down. I'm looking forward into the future to understand when the next move to be made, and I'm going to continue to support that ecosystem so he can continue to support us. Thank you.
I'll say a few words here, not quite in the middle, that at St. Louis Community College several years ago, and you can see the whole timeline in the handout, we formed committees under the leadership of Renita Luck, who is not in the IT, but was over online ed and distance learning and academic support. And it's under her leadership that the governance committee has grown very large, with faculty and staff working in different subgroups on different aspects of AI at our college. And it's gone terrifically well. We've done all the things that you're suggesting. So I wonder if we are the use cases in that book you just announced. Our next speaker is Renita Luck, so I would like to have a warm welcome for her answer. She is the Associate Vice Chancellor of Distance Learning and Academic Support, and so much more at St. Louis Community College. And her question is the following: how can teaching centers and instructional design units support faculty in responsibly integrating AI into learning environments?
Thank you. And before I start on my question, thank you for the kind words, Sahar, but it would not be possible without the support of our Chancellor, Dr. Pittman, who has been incredible in positioning the college to be prepared for this transformative technology that's going, and is the support that keeps us moving. So I think that's where the accolades should go. But for my question, I looked at this, and I'm going into the classroom with instructional design units and centers of teaching and learning. And I really thought about this. I live this a lot every day. And I thought, before we can really embrace innovation with this AI, we have to kind of confront the foundational challenge that everyone in the classroom is faced with, right? And that's the rise of AI-enabled cheating. I kind of put that on par with Maslow's theory, right? So like academic integrity is our food and shelter, and we can't really think about innovation until we have our food and shelter kind of handled, right? So I think the first job of our IDs and our CTLs is to help handle that. We know that faculty, most of our faculty have max loads. They're teaching multiple sorts, multiple modalities, and it's unrealistic to think that they can go in and just redesign their courses to keep pace with the way AI is evolving. So IDs and centers of teaching and learning can help provide some low-effort strategies to begin to adjust courses in a way that will begin to mitigate some of that rampant AI misuse. I believe that includes things like clear policies, like my colleagues here have talked about with AI, but I also think we have to expand that beyond that to talk about what do we have to say about proctored testing and virtual environments, and what policies there need to be clarified and expanded and explained more fully so there's no confusion around them with our students and our faculty all on the same page. Creating start guides and quick start guides like sample syllabus statements and AI integrity flowcharts that are there and available for faculty if they believe there's misuse happening. Creating AI education for students. So there's a lot of confusion about what can I use, what can I not use, when can I use it. So providing that education and then coupling it with an AI integrity pledge so that faculty know what students have been taught and what they've committed to doing with that education, as well as providing ideas for how to add reflection assignments and personal components into assignments, or how to integrate multimodal assignments into a online class so that you're beginning to be more not just discipline specific but modality specific as AI attacks those a bit differently. I also think things like low stakes proctoring and incorporating grading rubrics where the metric also addresses originality, process, as well as the ethical use of AI. So we get that under control a bit. They're not radical changes, right? They're not altering, they're not, nothing you've not thought about, but they are things that will begin to restore trust in student work. And that's where we're at now, needing to restore that. I also think it's the responsibility of IDs and CTL units to help faculty innovate and integrate AI into learning. As many of my colleagues have already said, I agree with most of what's been said here. And I think we have to start where STLCC has started with trying to identify an enterprise level, or in some cases discipline-specific level resources that are consistent for our faculty and students. What this does is it allows us to define clear expectations, and it allows us to create exhaustive, comprehensive training opportunities so that everybody is very clear of what we can use and how we can use it. I think we need to facilitate workshops and collaborative course builds, right? Cross-discipline, faculty coming together, sharing ideas, building their course content together, using AI, and collaborating on how that moves forward. We have a team at STLCC of English faculty that are doing just that to try and integrate it into English. And they're building custom bots tied directly to the content of those courses for students. And they're beginning to understand that these things can happen. Again, not earth-shattering, AI-generated arguments that students then vet with scholarly sources, brainstorming tools, nothing that is earth-shattering, but the little movements that begin to progress us forward so that faculty and students alike begin to understand I can engage with AI without losing the ability to begin to learn how to critically think and how to question it and how to move forward with it. So the goal's not just to teach with AI, it's to teach with AI in a way that builds those critical thinking skills. I do think we have to be proactive in curating resources, offering ongoing professional development, fostering communities of practice, and building opportunities where faculty can learn from one another. And I agree that we have to have a space where you can test and you can experiment and you can fail without, do that safely. So in conclusion, I think we have two tasks ahead of us. One is to help mitigate the misuse of AI, and the other is to help with the innovation and the integration of it in course content. Thank you.
Panelists, any follow-up? Next up, we have from a Center for Teaching and Learning, Anna Cunningham, who is working at Washington University in St. Louis, and her question is the following. What ethical frameworks should guide institutional decisions around adopting or restricting AI tools?
Thank you. Hello. So this is a tough question. I chose it intentionally. There are a couple specific frameworks that I'd like to mention today, but my goal is not to answer this question comprehensively. Instead, I really want to just open the door to conversation and get us thinking and started. That said, I do have some ethical frameworks that I would like to suggest that prioritize the student experience, the communities that our universities are embedded within, and formation of a healthy future society, having these things centered when making decisions about AI. The first frameworks I'd like to mention are deontological and consequential in nature, focused on academic integrity and the purpose of education, like was just mentioned. While AI has been shown to be able to support learning when applied strategically, it is no secret that if it's used in a way that outsources understanding, critical thinking, or intellectual growth, it can be detrimental. So considering how and when AI is applied is vital. This is not only in the immediate application, but also requires consideration of long-term impacts. So for example, will this application prepare students for our new world, or will it make them overly dependent on the tool in a setting that requires independent thinking? Universities need to create and clearly define appropriate use guidelines that preserve the integrity of intellectual work and the development of critical and independent thinking long-term. This appropriate use will and should vary at a granular level depending on the learning objective, making that transparent communication even more vital. The second framework is a justice-based framework that centers equity and fairness. AI is not a neutral tool. It reflects the data it was trained on and the systems it's embedded within, both which include bias. It can reinforce existing inequalities, such as privileging students who have better access to paid tools or producing biased outputs that disadvantage certain groups. It is important to consider who benefits from the use of AI and who is burdened by it. Banning AI will not prevent student use. Instead, it will restrict it to those who can afford premium subscriptions. Enterprise AI solutions can provide equitable access to tools. That said, once obtained, it is important to ensure these tools are regularly audited for bias and that guardrails are applied in areas like advising, grading, or evaluation, where fairness is essential. Third, a human rights framework that recognizes our responsibility to communities and the public. Universities do not exist in isolation. They are embedded within communities who their decisions directly impact and to whom they are regarded as beacons of wisdom. When a university adopts AI, it signals what kind of technologies are legitimate, what kind of oversight is acceptable, and what trade-offs are justified. If it embraces opaque systems, invasive surveillance, or unaccountable decision-making, it can influence similar adoptions, leading to public distrust and even direct harm. When adopting AI technologies, universities need to model practices that prioritize privacy, autonomy, and dignity over efficiency. Fourth, principalist and environmentalist frameworks that recognize our responsibility to the future. Universities directly shape the future. Today's students will carry forward the norms we establish now. If they learn that AI can be used without transparency, accountability, or reflection, that is the culture they will reproduce. Therefore, we have to ask, what future are we shaping? We need to teach students not just how to use innovative tools, but how to engage with them critically and ethically. Additionally, considering how these tools impact the long-term health and future of our communities is vital. There is broad lack of transparency and understanding about how these tools impact the environment. Universities can lead the way in scholarship in this area, as well as advocate for and model responsible and environmentally conscious practice. So what does this look like in practice? It requires universities to switch from a reactive modality to a proactive modality that promotes long-term vitality not only of the isolated university members, but the surrounding communities in which they're embedded.
Yes, Dr. Gant.
I'm sorry, it took a little while for me, but I do think she made excellent points, especially I want to hit on the proactive piece, and it goes back to what the dean at SLU talked about in terms of the ecosystem. And I want to make sure that the ecosystem is very much put toward the front. A few years ago, my institution, Maryville University, invested quite a bit into AI and technologies, over $20 million. We utilized U.com as a kind of a Gen AI aggregator, and that has yielded phenomenal results to this point. So I harken back on it thinking, like, what if we hadn't have done that? We also created AI in residence on the academic affairs side to work with, not only with students, but to work with our DLX, which is essentially our digital learner experience, or Maryville's IT as well. So that ecosystem that we kind of laid the foundation for years ago has put us in a position where we're just even right with AI right now. So just something to think about in terms of higher ed.
Other thoughts? Our next question is going to Jeremy Farmer, who is a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, as well as above a bunch of something with Chief Data Officer at 3Cloud, which maybe you'll tell us more about that. And you're in the School of Engineering. I hope I didn't butcher any of that. The following question is going to Dr. Jeremy Farmer. What responsibilities do institutions have to prepare students for an evolving labor market where many routine tasks are automated?
Yeah, I sat in an interesting spot with my appointment at WashU that I also work for a company, 3Cloud, which was just acquired by Cognizant, one of the biggest consulting companies in the world, where I serve as Chief Data and AI Officer and run their strategy practice. So I'm actually seeing what is happening in academia, both as somebody who is supposed to be shaping and producing the labor talent going out to the market, and I'm a consumer of that same talent. So it's interesting to see both sides. So one, I'll be honest, it's even sitting up here, hearing how people are talking about, it's encouraging that these are the questions being asked. But have no doubt, technology is absolutely automating everything. We talk about finding funding for IT departments. We are shrinking the time it takes to close the books at the end of the month, saving a day and a half, which does directly impact the labor market, does impact the budget people have. There's a lot of money being spent in. $20 million, there are companies now throwing billions of dollars into this, the big players, right? So we definitely know that automation is happening. But at the academic level, we are supposed to be shaping the people still. And I think it's actually changing how we are going about shaping the people. I think that's what's most important. So not so much about routine tasking anymore. It's thinking about things around how do you actually think about a problem? How do you evaluate the options? How do you make decisions and communicate effectively? Some of this stuff is considered soft skills almost in some ways in the professional landscape. These are all going to be even more prevalent. But I think it's already been hit on, so I can save a lot of time here. Number one on my list was we are required as educators to bring AI literacy across every single discipline. It doesn't matter if it's business, IT, computer science. I teach masters in like applied computer science, AI, data science. Like I'm a hardcore math geek, right? But if you don't know what tool is right for what problem, if you don't know what these tools are capable of, I mean, we probably would go around the room and all of us would list all the different types of tools from Claude to using things like, different tools to even generate code for us, right? We got all the different ones out there. It's really important. But we got to understand what those tools are. I think second, it really comes down to it's not so much about the tool itself, it's how we use the tool. I think we have to train people on how to know when to trust it, know when to challenge it, know how to turn it into better outcomes. When generative AI first started gaining momentum, everybody suddenly on LinkedIn became a prompt engineer. Everybody now is an engineer in this world, which it's amazing. We've moved well past prompting. But I think what this really gets down to is critical thinking, communication, adaptability, that critical reasoning that has almost been a consistent theme across what everybody's thinking, and how we're trying to figure out how do we continue to shape that in the world of AI. I think third, institutions have to get more practical in how they practice with students. So we talked about safe spots. We talked about changing our curriculums or changing our syllabi. One of the things that I'm doing at WashU is every one of my classes, we have a corporate sponsor where we do a real-life project with a sponsor. So we've mainly focused on companies here in St. Louis. We partnered with Edward Jones. We've partnered with the Centenes, the RGAs. We find the right project that creates a safe spot, and it's a win for everybody. It's a win for our students to be able to get the practical hands-on vocational experience, get away from theory. It's a way for our community in St. Louis. We're trying to be a rising tide so we can bring more talent in the community, get people to stay in St. Louis because we need more people to stay in St. Louis for our companies. And I think the other key thing is we are getting an opportunity to do something that sometimes in the classroom we can't do. Bring them a real-life project. I mean, I can shape up stuff from my consulting world all day long for them, but it's still theory. I'm mocking data. I might be using generative AI to create the mock data. I try to do other things, but these companies can do this for us. So I think the last thing I want to call out real quick too here as educators, and I'm seeing it, and I think it's been touched on a little bit, when it comes to AI, we have to worry about equity. There are people coming into the institutions that have deep experience with AI and some who still have very little experience whatsoever. We can't let our students get lost in that because, again, if they just jump into it, not know the things about guardrails, don't know about the ethics, don't know about the things where it can lead you wrong, there are plenty of stories out there where things have gone really bad with AI. So I think that's a really important thing for us to keep in mind, that we can't assume everybody, because all these young kids are doing all this stuff in technology and better at it, doesn't mean they all are at the same level. And so I guess if I wanted to leave one takeaway, so I think the future of higher education for us is not about competing with AI at all. I think it's about graduating students who actually know how to use it wisely while questioning its criticality, and also really focusing on human judgment in that process.
Do you have anything to add? I saw some nodding during his answer. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Thank you, Dr. Farmer. So the next question is going to the Executive Director of WashU's Digital Transformation, and this is Dan Marinin. I hope I'm saying it. Moranin. And the question is this: what do higher education leaders most often misunderstand about the realities, limitations, and capabilities of today's AI systems?
Thank you very much for asking the question. Thank you for allowing me to be in this panel. So my background is in software architecture and enterprise architecture. I loved Professor James. You brought up the idea of are people who are going to do well in the AI world are neurodivergent people, and I forgot who else you mentioned. Well, I'm actually a neurodivergent, atypical type person. I have 3 kids who are also neuroatypical. My kids are in essentially a special education type system. It's called PEGS, gifted program, and I think outside the box. I'm in an interesting place at WashU where I get to experiment. I work with Anna, and she knows I'm a bit of a chaos, and I think very differently than others. I deploy things, I try things, I break things, and I enjoy it. I've only been at WashU for 2 years, so hopefully I'll be there for another couple more years. They won't fire me. I won't break anything too much. But the one thing that I think leaders and maybe neurotypical people need to think about is that they need to worry about something what I call the snapshot fallacy. So my undergrad's actually in philosophy, and I know that the snapshot fallacy is not a formal fallacy. But let's just pretend it's a formal fallacy. And what the snapshot fallacy is that you are making a judgment on something at a point in time, and you're not thinking through how it changes. And we are seeing and experiencing something that none of us will probably see again for a while. This complete dynamic changing thing, this tool, this other. I'm not quite sure if it's just a computer program. I'm a little worried it might be some kind of person. It's very strange. But one of the things I know is that your concerns and your thoughts on AI, it's going to necessarily change because it's going to present interesting opportunities and potentially threats if we do not dynamically change how we look at it. And what do I mean by dynamic change? We need to have judgments on how we're looking at it. We need to look at how AI can act ethically today, come up with ethical frameworks, and then we may need to change it later on because AI is going to become something that we don't understand yet. So one of the things I would strongly suggest is whatever plan you have, if you have a 5 or 10 year strategic plan, it shouldn't be about AI. It should be about, actually what Anna said, proactively thinking about how you're going to react to AI. Because your thoughts on AI today are going to be wrong in probably 3 or 4 months. If you guys had a chance to look at something called Anthropic Mythos, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, look that up. Everything that you're doing today is going to be different in a couple of months. And I'm going to give you one example. Something that, so I have some friends in Silicon Valley who I get to text and say, hey, is this all market hype? Are they just trying to get it so that everyone wants it? Because I really want Anthropic Mythos. Like when it's on, I'm going to spend $1,000 a month just to get it because I'm pretty sure I can automate my entire life. But anyway, so I want this, and I texted them and they said, Dan, this is real. And we are actually scared. And when my friends in San Francisco and Silicon Valley are scared, I get a little scared too. And so one of the things that they said, which was really fascinating, is we spent a lot of time talking about prompt engineering and how do you interact with an AI. Prompt engineering is going to change. Because right now, when you talk to AI, you tell it what you think it should be doing. You give it the plan, you give it the ideas, you say, I want you to work within this sandbox. Well, some of the AIs that we work right now aren't necessarily as intelligent as us, actually. Well, models like Mythos are actually going to be more intelligent than us. I am not going to talk to Einstein, if you were here today, and tell him how to do quantum mechanics. I'm just going to tell him, hey, I have this idea. Can we use quantum mechanics to create, X? This is what we're going to use AI in the future. We will limit AI on how we tell it things. So we got to be really careful with that. So I guess one of the things, I only got a minute left, and I have 1,000 things to talk about. The one thing I want to talk about, I want to bring it back to the idea of AI. We should really be focusing on us as humans. The way that we deal with AI is going to be in our ability to create durable, persistent, strong human systems. AI is going to potentially be a threat to us. Now, this is really strange because I lead AI at WashU, or I help lead AI at WashU. But the other thing I'm looking for, and I'm trying to focus on, and I think everyone in higher education needs to consider this, because I think higher education is a fairly hierarchical organization, which I think actually needs to change. We need to empower our people. We need to help people gain wisdom, because when you empower people, they have to make the decisions, not the deans, not the executive directors, but the people. So build durable systems by empowering the people, teach them how to think well, especially the students, and I think we'll be able to and use AI to its positive end. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, a follow-up, Mike?
So one of the things with misunderstandings, I think, and this is not reflecting on my colleague Dean Nickerson over there, but some leaders see it as a silver bullet, as AI is going to solve all the problems. And so there are a lot of use cases that get brought to us in terms of, hey, we want to have a self-service bot that can help students navigate this or that. Well, it turns out if you're not maintaining your websites and your knowledge bases and keeping them current, all it's going to do is help students find the wrong answer faster than they would have before. So there are appropriate uses for that, but there's also infrastructure and other things you have to consider before you just release it, or it's going to send you down the wrong path.
Yes, in addition?
Yeah, I just have one other thing. So I think he's right from the perspective of people translate the tools to transformation, and the tool itself does not do the transformation. And that's where I think there's a big misunderstanding. So I think it's really about the individuals and the people who know how to work through the redesign and process. It's really this rethinking the way we work. That's the most critical piece I think that we got to teach people how to do, because we can figure out the tooling that will work regardless of different model types, different kinds of other tools that aren't even AI related. It's got to be about how can we rethink how we can work better, faster, more efficiently, but also comes from better business acumen. It also comes from being more literate in what is possible, what's not possible. So it's exciting.
Other follow-ups on this question? Next, we turn to Dr. Brian Gant, who is the Associate Dean of Technology at Maryville University. His question is the following: how can colleges and universities avoid over-reliance on AI by ensuring students learn to critique, interpret, and challenge the AI-generated content?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And I feel like Dr. Farmer has answered my question already, so I don't know if I can get into it. But one of the things, and I think it's something that he just spoke about when he talked about putting people into the process, right? And I have a great example, and I hope Phyllis doesn't mind me talking about this. So we have a cybersecurity capstone class. We partner that capstone class, and we talk about real-world experiences, right? We partner with NGA, with the National Geospatial Agency. Every Tuesday, we have NGA mentors come out to our campus, and they mentor our students in this class, and our students are actually working on a real-life intelligence product at the unclass level, conducting the research for it. And they are allowed to use AI in gathering information for that. One of the things that they were using AI for was prompting a script, right? They wanted to prompt a script to basically scrub databases and open source information to help them out, with this particular research question. And it wasn't until Phyllis got involved with that student on the initial try, and they worked and they went a couple of days back and forth on getting that script correct. But the student understood that the output wasn't the answer immediately, right? He understood that, as I tell my students, AI lies, right? You have to understand somewhat what's going in from an input basis with Gen AI and understand the output that's coming out. And now they've crafted that script to a point where now he's utilizing it to have his group be 2 times more efficient than what they were just 2 weeks ago in gathering this information, right? And so I think that's just a perfect example of some of the things colleges and universities can do to critique or challenge the AI-generated content. There's obviously things within learning management systems. You can drill down at a core level with assignments. This assignment is AI useful or allowed to use AI. This assignment isn't. At a core level, us as faculty and staff, we have to raise the critical thinking level expectations of our students, whether it be through case studies, study groups, or what have you. And I'll just read one particular statement. And as I said, I think a lot of what I had with this particular question has been answered by this great panel. But the conversation around artificial intelligence in higher education often begins with concern. But I believe it should begin with responsibility, as I mentioned before. We're not asking how to prevent students from using AI. Instead, we are asking a more important question: how do we ensure students are thinking because of it, not in place of it, right? Not a replacement. Avoiding over-reliance on AI starts with fundamental shift in how we design learning. If an assignment can be completed entirely by AI, then the assignment isn't truly measuring learning, right? Our role as educators is not to simply assess outputs, but to interrogate the thinking behind them. That means asking students to critique AI-generated responses, to show your work, if you will, showing my age there, and to identify where they fall short, where bias may exist, and where deeper human insight is required. So I think as a collective within that ecosystem, we can come up with ways, whether it be through instructional design in both the on-ground and the online environment, that we really challenge the thinking around AI. And when it gets to the point, whether it's quantum computing or whatever the next thing is, I think that same thought process has to be there in terms of technology.
Thank you. Yes, Phyllis.
Speaking to that project, I think this was a project that students had to learn that they couldn't use AI because of the sensitive nature of the project. They couldn't just hop in the AI because this is a project that we have to be very careful how we talk about it, what we do, how they navigate it, because it is tied to the Department of Defense. And so they've learned, and it's been quite eye-opening, how the Department of Defense work. Like, you can't take your cell phones into NGA. You have to keep them in your car, right? So you cannot use AI while you're at work to help you with your job. So it's been real eye-opening for students how they have relied on AI because now they can't. So the more opportunities we give students with those assignments and tasks, the better off they'll learn good use of AI.
Thank you. Other additions on this question? I'll use my power as the moderator to echo something that Dr. Gant said and see if I could get someone to comment more. I think the comment was something like, if the assignment can be entirely done by AI, then that's not a good measure for their learning. What is working or is not working at your institutions? What are your faculty trying that has failed, or is any examples from this? Or anyone disagree with that idea, or we all think that if it could, please, Mike, yes.
Yeah, so one of the things, and this again is working with faculty, one of the things that we've had numerous faculty talk about is if you think about a math problem, right, and they show their work, so for all of history, math professors could go see the work and what the student was thinking as they were doing that. Some of the things we're trying is allowing students to use AI, but capturing that. So those interactions with AI, the faculty can see and sort of see their thought process as they're building it. Because if you're writing a response to prompts, right, you just see the end result. And so if we're able to look at that and see, you can sort of see the work that the student's doing as their thought process as they're developing whatever it is they're writing. So it's sort of similar and allowing you to do that in ways you couldn't before.
Yes.
I don't know if I have much time, but I want to say I do think that if an assignment can be completed fully by AI, then that assignment is probably not designed to effectively address that learning outcome. I do think there are several learning objectives, foundational skills, foundational facts that AI can easily answer, but we need to preserve how to assess those. And so I struggle with this when I talk to faculty. I have a little background in biology, and I think, how can I ask students to apply biology if they don't have the foundational terminology, vocabulary, critical thinking that they would need to develop without AI? So, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I get torn because I think that the issue comes down to instructional design. Yeah.
Additions, please, Tara.
I really appreciate that. I've taught writing for the past 30 years, and you can imagine what AI has done to my sense of self, being a teacher and a writer and a teacher of writing. But I'm asking myself similar questions. I don't have easy answers to those, but I ask myself, should I even be teaching syntax anymore? Should I even be teaching sentence structure anymore, paragraph structure anymore? Are these things that I need to? I think about the amount of time I spent teaching these things in the past, and I'm genuinely asking myself, is this the thing that I should be spending my time on anymore? And, any given day I'm on either side of that. But I think these are the questions we have to start to ask ourselves, and also be transparent with students that we are asking ourselves and be learners alongside of them when we ask those questions. I think we need to stop pretending to be experts in the moment where everything is changing all the time. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Dan.
I want to respond to that because I think language, I don't necessarily think you're actually just teaching writing. You're teaching thinking, right?
Sure.
And that is the most important skill that we will need when we're dealing with AI.
Sure.
So to what end are these assignments actually helping our students? It should be to be better thinkers. And have them show their work because you want to see how they are thinking. And remind them that, too. Right? That yes, you could use AI to do that, but have you actually improved your thought patterns? So please continue.
I wonder if there's a use case or some kind of analogy outside of the pedagogical conversation that we're having. So this all started with Dr. Gant's idea about instruction and how do we measure the students' learning, right? And if the idea that we all share is something like whatever work can be entirely done by AI is not a good assignment in the first place, I'm wondering, is there some kind of analogy for someone who's in the audience thinking about operations, efficiency, equipping staff to actually perform a task and giving them something like Boodlebox or different kinds of tools to do that work? Any uses, Jeremy?
I mean, we're seeing people incent behaviors in corporations to think first about how could I use AI to solve this problem. And we're seeing organizations actually put it within even development plans and their end-of-year evaluations, because the idea is you should always be thinking first how I can leverage AI to be able to do the task, because if you can, you're working more efficiently, you can focus on higher value work. So we're tying that to morale, saying, look, let's get rid of the mundane tasks, let's focus on that. So I actually think that's happening in quite a bit of places. And I can tell you from my experience on my day job, it is definitely finance. We've gotten the health insurance, just general commercial property insurance, all that stuff. Everything is going to not fully, but 99% adjudicated, early pre-adjudicated, right? They're already doing 80% before AI, right, in most cases. But we're seeing a lot more of that, and people are trying to drive it. And those who are actually leading with AI on how to be better, they're the ones who are being rewarded with the opportunities.
Yes.
I'll offer a slightly different perspective from what we've heard. That fundamentally, at a brain level, we're creating cognitive structures when we're learning. And what is learning? There are different elements of mindware. Part of it's memorization, part of it's about routines, part of it's about creativity. So even if you have an assignment that an AI can do without a human being, what we're trying to do in students from a learning perspective is to build these cognitive structures that can be reused either in terms of recall or in terms of creativity or in terms of performing operations that allow us to tackle novel situations and come up with solutions. I don't think when we're designing curriculum we often think at that level of what learning actually is. And I think what AI is forcing us to do for the long run is to think more carefully about that brain level notion of learning and what we're trying to accomplish for each one of those different types of cognitive structures.
Brilliant. Thanks. Anything else on this? Wonderful. Thanks for letting me go on that tangent. The next question is going to Phyllis Davis, who is the Director of Cybersecurity, the graduate program at Maryville University, and her question is the following. What emerging AI-enabled threats should higher ed take more seriously, especially in relation to identity, academic fraud, and system vulnerabilities?
Thank you, Sahar, and thank you all for having me back. Glad to see that our AI Governance Committee is still doing great work. I served as the co-chair under Dr. Relita Luck with the first governance of AI here at STLCC, so just glad to see it still going strong. So what emerging threats? So in the cyberspace, we think of everything from government risk and compliance, right? So myself, being the geek that I am, and some of you that I've worked with, I always have some ideal, some new tool that I'm requesting or that I want to try, right? And so from a risk perspective, when we talk about identity, we've moved into a new space with AI, right? So we've gone from our prompt engineering, we've done our co-pilot AI, and now we're moving into the agentic workspace. That agentic workspace says, hey, I need AI to solve all of our problems, right? I mean, that's what we want, really. All right. Can AI wash my dishes? Do my laundry? Right? So we're all thinking, like, how does it solve our problem? And so when we're talking about what are the risks of that is, now that we move into the agentic workspace, do I need a co-pilot system or am I looking at an autonomous system, right? So if I'm looking at an autonomous system, it has less human interaction, right? So if we're talking about identity, and in a agentic workspace that's going to review a student's transcript and make the decision whether it's going to give credit to that student or whether that student is going to be admitted into your institution, that's an autonomous agentic workspace, right? Wouldn't that solve a lot of problems from the staff side? Wait a minute, read the transcript, give the credit, make a decision on admission, not have to call the program coordinators, directors, talk to admissions, have 5 emails go back and forth or whether or not a course will be accepted or not, right? So this is that agentic workspace that we're moving in. And so identity is a big issue in that. Because if I have an autonomous system like that, how do I identify the work that that system's doing, right? So if I'm doing that work as an employee, you can track me from an IT perspective the moment I log into my PC and see the work that I'm doing. How do we identify that in these agentic workspaces? So that's going to be an emerging thing that institutions need to pay attention to, right? And then the other identity thing is the AI leakage, right? So yes, we want people to be innovative. We want people to create these agents, do all of these great fun things that solve some problems. But then how do we manage that leakage? How do we know no private information is being put into these workspaces, right? Because we're expecting the agentic workspace to make that decision. So are we investing in systems that's going to help us with the future of autonomous AI systems, right? So that's the identity piece, right? And when you have an agent in your network, in your system, we've been taught from the beginning of AI, it's not human. It's not real. Quit talking to it like please and thank you. You don't say those words when you're prompting because it's not human. But when it's in your system from an IT perspective, we have to treat it like it's a human, right? We have to look at it as this attack may be an agent attacking our system, but we still have to treat it with the same care, policies, governance, and compliance as though it is human, all right? Another threat right now on the academic fraud side is fake admissions applications, right? So these agents, I see some oh, that means, oh, they've experienced it already, right? Where an agent can apply to 1,000 universities in minutes and look like it's a real student. It has all of the data, the information. Where's the human that's going to look at 1,000 applications that came in 1 minute and say, oh, yeah, we need to take a look at all 1,000 of these and make sure they're actually a real person, right? So academic fraud that, again, we don't even think about. And then lastly, system vulnerabilities, another threat, because every agent, every system, every third-party application you have is now embedded with AI. So the minute you buy a new application, the minute you decide to take on a new tool, it's embedded with AI. We now have AI into the devices, and so even in our CPUs, what information do we need to protect? So my time is up, but I'll be available later for the people who want to know from the operations perspective.
Thanks, Phyllis. Mike, did you want to add on that? Thank you. Thank you, Phyllis.
I think those are the high points. I think when we're all, I think everyone's seeing those sort of attack vectors now, and I think it's sort of AI just enables the bad actors to do things faster, right? So in the past they could do some of those same types of attacks, but now it doesn't take human bodies to do that, right? They can write programs and use those agents to do that. So it just makes the attack points more vulnerable because it's easier for those people to attack it.
Other thoughts? Yes.
I'd like to tie three things together. I'm going to key on the please and thank you to the AI bots, and this goes back to the book I offered. You say please and thank you not for the agent, but for you. Because ultimately, it's going to reflect who you are, and it can reflect your best self or your worst self. And if you do not go through that engagement of how you want to present outwards, then when you actually come in contact with humans, you'll find out those cognitive structures aren't there. So this is where this idea of a formation-first use of AI, which is different from an efficiency use. We've all been talking about efficiency uses, but we can use AI bots if we prime them appropriately and if we sort of maintain them appropriately to advance who we are as human beings, which are the types of skills that my colleagues have talked about are needed in the workplace. So I just want to draw that connection. It's a different reason, although the outcome is the same as you've recommended.
You know, but that was, the whole ideal of that was to do what? Remove the fear that it's not human, but yet we are dealing with era now where we have to deal with AI from a human and technology perspective. So we cannot eliminate one or the other. It's both.
Thank you. Moving to our last speaker, Tara Plachinowski, is that correct? Plachowski. Thank you, appreciate it. Who's an assistant professor and also running the Department of Teacher Education at Webster University. And her question is the following. What new pedagogical approaches are needed to design the assignments that leverage AI while still assessing higher order learning?
Thank you, Sahar. I just want to clarify, I'm absolutely not running the Department of Teacher Education. I'm a visiting assistant professor, and I deeply respect the folks who are running it so that I can teach my courses and do wonderful things other than administration. So I really appreciate so many of the topics everyone has touched on, and it sort of has shifted a bit what I want to talk about. I really want to focus on the concept of productive struggle. When we think about learning and what learning means, and Dr. Nickerson has talked a little bit about our cognitive processes, when we think about how we design for students now, what we want to be focused on is this idea of productive struggle and how we protect it. So I've been teaching teachers for quite a long time now, and before that I taught high school and middle school students. And new teachers are consistently concerned about rescuing students. When you watch a student go through struggle and you care about them, it's very difficult not to step in and provide the answer, or to step in and provide so much support that the struggle is so lessened and you're sort of moving until the magnets get close enough together that they clasp, right? We need that chasm of the unknown, of the misunderstanding, in order for our cognitive processes to ignite. That's how our brains learn. And so I think part of the response in this question is that we have to be having conversations with learners at every level to have them understand how they use AI and what it means when they ask AI to do something. Again, shifting from the idea of AI as efficiency, which is good and appropriate and useful in so many ways, but when it's not, is when it is robbing us of the opportunity to cognitively struggle. Even adults, in order to keep our learning going, need to cognitively struggle. And Dr. Nickerson just mentioned that. If you're not saying please and thank you, if you're not engaging in a certain way when you engage with AI, you will lose that cognitive process. And so how do we do this? How do we become designers? How do we become teachers that help our learners retain that struggle. And some of these have already been mentioned. But I think it's a really important time for us also to talk about the value of sociocultural learning in higher education. And distance learning brought so much equity and access to a group of students who had never had access to higher education before. And so I don't want to challenge the value or the use of online learning in higher ed as a tool for equity and access, but I want to encourage us to think about how we reject the idea of isolation in those systems now, and how we return to a way that we can socioculturally connect. Because those opportunities for sociocultural connection will often put the human back in the loop of machine learning. It allows for live interactive discussion where you have to have cognitive processing going on. It doesn't mean you have to have a weekly class meet, but there needs to be these sociocultural opportunities. Another opportunity that I think we can think about is using video. And as it turns out, it's one of those small things, like Dr. Luck mentioned, that you can shift in your teaching. When I ask a student to do a video reflection, I can very quickly, when watching a 3-minute video, know if that student is reading to me or if they're having an authentic reflective moment. And when they do have authentic reflective moments, and it's very easy to give feedback, nope, do it again until they do that, it's a light bulb changer. That's something I can assess. That's when, as Dr. Gant said, I'm assessing the process of thinking. I'm no longer focused on just give me all these products to tell me if you can do this well. We can't do that anymore. We need to think about how we assess thinking for students, having sociocultural moments to do that, having video moments to do that, asking them to ask themselves, why did the AI change my first draft in this way? And then have a conversation about that. What is being changed, why it's being changed, right? And so suddenly we're not focused on products, as we said before, but we're focused on processes and also designing experiences that reveal those processes. And that needs to be our new pedagogical move in higher education.
Thank you. Yes, follow up?
I'm going to respond to that because it's interesting. I taught graduate engineering in Boston at Northeastern University for 7 years. And when I was asked to teach this, I didn't know anything about teaching. And I picked up some books on how to teach well because I didn't want to screw up these students' minds. and this was back early in 2000s. And the point of the book was that they said the best teachers are the ones who actually help students think. Yeah. And the struggle was really, the idea of what you brought about struggle, I really love that because I had a lot of international students. This is engineering, a lot of people from China, a lot of India. Their pedagogical methodology back in their hometown seemed to be more memorization. And I challenged them with that, and they were mad because they couldn't get the right answer, and I wouldn't tell them, and I let them struggle. And what ended up happening at the end of the semester, they came to thank me, so I think you're absolutely right on. And I'd like to suggest that this is something that we need to do for our employees within our universities. We have to give them a safe place to struggle. I would tell my students, you can fail this course and that's actually okay. They're like, no, it's not okay. No, it's actually okay. But I want you to experiment, because if you're experimenting in your job place, you could get fired. Well, I think we need to create a place within our own environments where we can allow our staff to practice, to try things, to experiment without fear of getting fired. And I think that's one way we can create a durable human system to support the use of AI and to live with it, so to speak.
That's a wonderful idea. Thank you for sharing. Anna, I'll come to you next, but I'd like to interject. Are any of you at the 6 different institutions here actually doing these things? The ideas are great, but have any of you actually put on like a playground for your faculty or for your staff? Can someone tell us more about it? Anna, please. Oh, you were nodding your head.
Well, Dan and I are debating, I think, who should address this, because we're working together on a project that we're debuting this summer, and the entire kind of premise is getting faculty in a room together, an interdisciplinary group, giving guidance from the Center for Teaching and Learning on pedagogical best practices and teaching and learning with AI, having software support in terms of AI capabilities, technical support from IT, as well as instructional designers, and support from the library as well, and getting us all in a room together almost as sort of a thought incubator in assignment design, but also curricular design. So how can we redesign assignments and even entire courses to prioritize another word for that productive struggle, these desirable difficulties. And we are going to invite students in to pilot these assignments so that faculty have this safe place to develop and test and fail and revise before deploying them in a classroom. Yeah.
Yes, Phyllis?
So we, in our master's degree program, I told you I always have these grand ideals. You guys are used to me, right? And so I wanted students to debate with an AI as part of their assignment. And so we worked together with a group of faculty, but most importantly, we brought students in to help build the agents as well. So faculty and students were playing together in that sandbox to come up with this ideal to have our master's degree students actually debate, have a healthy debate with an AI agent. And so I think that's that space, that safe space for students as well as faculty that's worked on this. And so it's still ongoing. We have deployed it, and now we're going to wait and see if we get some feedback on that.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Phyllis. Renita?
I will share that we've done a little bit of that at STLCC. We had an initial group of math faculty that were working together on a tutor for a math class, again, tied into the content. We had to pivot several times because of technology, and then ultimately it was not the success that we anticipated it to be, but we took away lessons from that that we're now employing in other areas. So having that safe place to fail was very important. I think we can, you mentioned a minute ago, are there ways that we can take it on the operations side as well? We created a professional development day for our staff where they came together and they built into teams and they talked about pain points in their work and things that could be automated without losing human oversight. And they spent a morning together devising AI solutions to that and then presenting in the afternoon. And we found part of that was wonderful was when they would say, we tried this and it was an epic fail, right? It wouldn't do this, it wouldn't do that, but they learned from that and they reiterated from that. We're hosting feedback forums right now with faculty, asking them what professional development they need and what type of learning outcomes should students have mastered in the area of AI when they leave STLCC. And we know that'll be an iterative process as well. What is that going to look like? How is that going to change? So I would agree in all the points on that we need to have those communities that come together and realize we don't have the answers, but together we can come to something a little closer than we can separately.
Thank you. Jackson?
I had the innovation ecosystem question, and we've done all sorts of things that I'm not going to talk about. But I will say, if you want a place that's safe to experiment, it requires leadership who's not going to punish. And what they have to ask is, what did you learn? Great, what are you going to try next? So as you think about everything you've just heard, it's important, whether it's the chancellor or the provost or deans or others in position of authority, they have to adopt a disposition as a leader to support and encourage that innovation. I just wanted to throw that point out because no one had really touched on it. And if without that, there's no safe space.
What about this thought about return on investment? Does anyone have any thoughts? Say we were going to get together, Maryville and St. Louis University, Washington University in St. Louis, STLCC, Webster, we're all going to get together just like this. We're going to have a full day where we brainstorm the best ideas, one for operations, a different room for pedagogy, and we come up with all these ideas that aren't going to work. What about the food we bought? What about the rooms we reserved? I mean, what about the return on investment? Is that not important, Phyllis?
For every great invention, innovative ideal, it starts with a loss, right? There is no top revenue starting off. Like all of that time and effort and learning and engineering and building, and we have to have that mindset that at the start it is a loss. And the point that you want is, okay, when will we see that return? Not if, but when. But you have to be willing to do those innovations if you want to see success.
Gant, were you going to say more?
No, I was just going to say, you know, in terms of AI and return on investment, I think we all are in the game of enrollment, right, of students. And I think in terms of the future of higher ed, and I think James spoke about this, you know, the talks of, you know, AI taking jobs and things of that nature. It's more about having the skills in whatever major you have to apply AI in various different ways. And then I don't think if institutions aren't thinking like that and looking around the corner, that return on investment is going to be there, I believe, tenfold.
Other thoughts? Yes, James.
No, I was just going to build on that because a lot of the things we're talking about, there are a lot of assumptions we should also unpack, such as the value of what we do is all about interiority, as a kind of neo-romantic idea. But to that point more specifically, that's what I was going to say is, you know, the ROI is tuition revenue, enrollment, success of your students, et cetera. But what we haven't talked about, and that was what we also were discussing with identity, is Gen Z doesn't universally like AI. As a matter of fact, they hate it, right? And so in all of our studies, we started in 2021, and we started deploying our own algorithms and seeing how that would impact pedagogy. And we were shocked to find that they absolutely despised using it and loathed it, right? But we didn't know why. And so that's the first thing we have to kind of come to grips with is they're not clamoring to learn this. They're clamoring to go backwards to more analog technology in many ways. So it's kind of also our job to show them this is important, which is really hard when a lot of the faculty are saying, you know, stay away from this. You know, this is bad. This is just cheating, et cetera. But the top three things that we learned very briefly. Number one, after dozens of studies, we're like, why do some people love this and why do some people hate it, right? So number one, what we found is if it threatens their future vocation, right, then immediately they reject it. So if they're training to be a graphic designer and they see Canva can do that and now it's integrated with GPT, then they're like, why am I even doing this? Why am I here? So there's job loss. Remember that Americans fear job loss to robots above death, right? That's an actual survey. So secondly, we didn't know the others, though. We had like accountants, right, that were taking poetry classes, and they're like, oh, I hate it. I'm like, that's not your job, right? But it was their identity. I'm a poet. I'm a creative. That's who I am. And if you take away that, it's an existential threat to your identity. The third one was the hardest one. That's everyone in this room, and it's the hardest to admit. That's going to be domain expertise loss, right? Because knowledge is cheap now, right? It's not what you know, it's what you can do. And so that was really difficult. Like, why do English professors and computer science professors universally hate it more than others, like dance professors? And so we had to do studies like, that's why, right? It threatens their domain expertise. It hit them first. So I just want to kind of point that we have to be very aware of the psychological safety, as was mentioned, in trying to integrate this because it's not universally loved by our students.
I think the quote from my cyber law students who grew up with this, right, was that AI makes you more stupid. That's literally what they just told me like last week. So I think there's a stereotype that they love it, and it's quite the opposite.
I think that's where that balance comes in, right? We said in the classroom as a faculty member, we did an escape room, and they could not use anything other than the resources that was provided in the course, which was enough for them to do all of the tasks, right? They didn't want AI until they got stuck. Like, they used that resource until they hit the wall, which I knew it would. Task 7, I knew they would hit the wall. Task 7, they were like, when do we get to use AI? When do we get to ask a friend? Because I told them up front, we will get to a point where you can either ask a friend or ask AI. And they were waiting. They were watching the clock. But it was only when they hit the wall, right? When they hit a problem they couldn't solve. That's when they wanted it most. And so they're using it in good, productive ways. And so we have to quit thinking that our students are using it wrong and really create an environment for them to use it well. So throughout the entire class, they were watching their clocks and checking, and things that they hit the wall on, I'll come back to it and they'll move to the next one. You know, that's problem solving and critical thinking. That's what we want them to do most.
Tara, did you have a comment too?
Yeah, I think Dr. Davis spoke to it well, but I do think the phrase, I'm sorry.
Not doctor yet, doctoral student, that I am, but not doctor yet.
Close enough. The phrase like AI makes you stupider, I joke with my students, if I were teaching high school in this moment, I would absolutely use that phrase with them. But I would use the word can, right? It can make you stupider, and that's why it's so important that you understand how your brain thinks and why creativity, human creativity, is needed and important, and create experiences like this that show the value of how AI can be leveraged when it's meaningfully leveraged. And so I think those moments and revealing those moments instead of sort of hoarding our expertise in this moment is just really important to what we're doing and how we're moving forward.
Renita?
I just have one more comment on that. I think that we have to be willing as higher education to rethink some things, because I think we've had a lot of conversations here about productive struggle and how to go back to that and how important it is. But I think for a number of years, higher education has rewarded the end product with the grade, with the exam, with the final product, not the process getting to the product. So we have to now go back and change the way we think as well before we can help our students understand it's not about that final grade. It is about the struggle getting to that final grade. And so I think we've created some of the problem, and that has nothing to do with AI, right? That's our process.
If you go on to St. Louis Community College's website, you will see a public-facing website that all of you can access that has information for community members, for students, for faculty, educators, and on that website you can also access our strategic plan. It's the smaller, more executive version of the strategic plan that we've generated, but it's there. And you put in your email address and your name, and then you can download that information. And then we would be able to have your contact information so that we can invite you to other events like these that bring together different institutions of higher ed in St. Louis. Before we take a break, I would like to remind you what happens after the break. Of course, some of you might go home or wherever you go, and that's absolutely fine. I hope this was an impactful time for you listening to the panelists answer their questions. However, if you hang out after the break, you can find a room where a panelist is located waiting to have a more personal conversation with you. And so if you turn over the timeline of AI at STLCC, you will find the panelists' names and the room where they will be located and the time where they will be waiting for you to have a conversation. I request that before you hit those small groups and have those meaningful, deeper conversations, that you stop by the refreshments in the corner and you do grab a plate for yourself, which gives me less work to do. Again, my name is Sahar. I'm Associate Professor of Philosophy at St. Louis Community College, and thank you to the panelists. I now invite Dr. Jeff Pittman, our Chancellor, to give some reflective comments. Thank you. The panelists you could stay seated for this portion. That would be, just kidding. He's on the phone call. Thank you, Dr.
Thanks, Sahar. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for being here today. And what a pleasure to have all these experts from St. Louis here talking to us about AI. For me, it's a joy not to be thinking about the legislative session right now, but to be distracted by all this knowledge that's in the room right now. I was sitting here kind of reflecting, as I think Phyllis and Renita can share with you here. I think that for AI to occur in any of your institutions, the board and the CEO, they have to be on board with this. They have to create these kind of environments. And, I appreciated Dan's comment about it's too early for a strategic plan. But I think you need a framework. I mean, we have what we call a strategic plan. It's in a lot of ways just more about guiding principles for an institution to follow and for the employees and for the students to follow as well. I think that's a critical thing. Some of the things that I'll reflect on that I heard from all of you. It needs to be all-inclusive. It needs to be not only the teaching and learning process, but operations. Bill, Renita, you mentioned the struggle we're having with that here of how we use it for operations, but I think you have to do that. I also really like the comment about developing internal partnerships. This could be an opportunity for more desilization of higher education. We tend to go off in our own corners, but this is something you can develop across the board, and we're organized in silos. Higher education is. This could be an opportunity to bring more folks together as we serve our common cause to bring students in, educate them, and get them to complete. I think also the words came to my mind, no fear. We need to create an environment for especially faculty to experiment. I think it may be a little early for the ROI question to be answered at this stage, but I see great potential here. When we think about student completion, particularly at the community college level and how students come to us, my next observation is that variance in student readiness. And I saw one of our great math faculty here at Forest Park a few minutes ago, Brandy Englert. We talked about when students come in, the college has moved away from developmental education at this point because we realize it's just a failed academic model. And we place students in the gateway general education classes and then build support systems around them. I think AI can help us with that in terms of, remembering Tara's comment, you want to challenge students in regards to their cognitive ability, but within that, students need not only those critical thinking skills, but if they come in at different levels than their colleagues in the classroom, than their students in the classroom, the challenge for me is how do we utilize AI to build those support mechanisms for those students that may not be as far along as other students may be in math or in English, or any of the foundational skills that we want to develop. Finally, maintaining foundational skills. I don't see AI replacing any of that. I think it's just a tool that we can use to help build that. So I don't think we want to look at it as a replacement, but as a way to better enhance our students' educational experience at each of our respective institutions, regardless of what level if the certificate, associate degree, graduate, doctoral, medical school, wherever they are, how do you best use and leverage those tools for our students going forward? And that's a tremendous responsibility for our education leaders to take on going forward. And I don't want to miss the point about being responsible with AI usage. And this is just something that we'll have to figure out over time as it changes. But I'm just so excited and thrilled to hear the expertise around this room. I always feel good coming out of a session I feel good about St. Louis, that we have these kinds of higher education leaders in our region doing everything they can to support the use of AI and advance student knowledge here. Thank you. I know I'm standing between you and the break, but again, could you please congratulate our panelists? They just did a wonderful job. Thank you. And let's give a round of applause for Sahar, who's worked so hard in putting this all together. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the day.
I hope that you enjoyed all of these informal conversations that you've had, in addition to the more formal introductions. I heard from some people that your bosses have sent you here to network and learn what other folks are doing at other institutions, and I think that's absolutely grand. Welcome. I'm inviting now to the podium one representative from each of the small groups so that they can come up and share what the conversation was like in their room. Each room will have about a minute to share the ideas about hopefully the human impact of AI in higher ed, but if you had a tangent, then please share that as well. Would you like to come up? Thank you. And if you're one of the representatives, just come line up so we can go pretty quickly. Thank you. Just state your name, where you work, what you do, and then the insight. Thank you.
My name is Laura Warner, and I am the Director of Workforce and Employment Services at Jefferson College. And one of the interesting talking points that we discussed was the room for principled objection from our students, and kind of that balance between allowing them to have that objection, but also the reality that AI is going to be a part of the future, and that lack of knowledge could impact them in their career in the future as well. So interesting conversation. I think there's definitely room for more discussion on that area.
All right. My name is Rose McAndrew. I'm an assistant professor here at STLCC. In fact, we were in my classroom where I teach. And I chose to be with Tara, and Brian had to leave for family reasons, because she is an English professor, and I thought that was the person that connected the most with me in terms of what I do teaching in health sciences, because it's a little bit different than hearing what our computer sciences, our mathematicians are doing, and that was speaking a little bit different language. And so we were asking her very specific things. It wasn't a ton of time to talk. I would have loved a little bit more of that. But she did have some just kind of quick tips, and because she's an English teacher and a writing teacher, a teacher of teachers, she had a lot of people with the handwriting things first, really just getting things out to try to get the students to let us know what they are thinking without any kind of AI assistance. And then she's also using prompts. She's having her students use prompts that she is generating and having them reveal changes made with improving grammar, I'm assuming, and syntax, as well as what ideas are missing, the jumps, leaps with logic and gaps, such as editing. She does have them sign a memorandum of understanding at the beginning of the course, and she's also using an agentic AI for feedback. So I thought those were all great. We did have more of a philosophical question. I see a divergence happening here as we adopt Boodlebox here at STLCC and other things. Maybe a lot of faculty will jump on board, and there'll be faculty who want nothing to do with it. And just philosophical questions like, what do we do about that? And I don't have an answer, and I don't think we did either, because there we are. Thank you.
I'm Darrell Winneman, recently retired faculty in philosophy at Webster University. Our group discussed the issue of the possible personhood of AI agents perhaps. We made a distinction, I think interesting distinction between legal personhood and moral personhood. On the legal side, if an AI agent were involved in injuring a person, where does the responsibility lie? With regard to moral personhood, the example I use, for what it's worth, if the Star Trek character Data were to come up to you and say, I don't want to be called Data anymore, I want to be called John, would you respect its wish? If so, then it seems to me you would be treating it as a person. So mention was made of a book on this topic called Post-Human Personhood, which unfortunately is not available free online, but I still recommend it, even though I have to say that's a book that I wrote back in 2013. So anyway, thank you very much.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rose Tibetny. I'm part of the McGraw-Hill team that supports St. Louis Community College. It was an absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I appreciate you opening it up to the public so that I have the opportunity to learn a bit more. So I was in the room with Mr. Mike Holmes over at SLU, and something that he had mentioned, if you wait for the perfect pilot, chances are the technology will have already changed. So I'd asked, when you're evaluating AI tools, particularly around student success, what do some key indicators of success look like? Not so much about like an ROI, but what do course outcomes need to be, the intuitiveness of the platform for instructors and students, so kind of learning some more around that. And then Travis McCacken, over at Lindenwood, we were talking a little bit about power skills, and then just like AI literacy skills and how you all are helping students market themselves when they graduate and they say that they are AI literate. What exactly does that mean? How do they explain that to a potential employer? So, great conversations.
Hi, my name's Leanne. I work for St. Louis Community College. I have to confess I was held up by snacks and got into the room late, so I don't know if there was a question proposed. But we were discussing how in higher education, how to navigate and bring teams together when it comes to AI, whether it's faculty or support staff, and how to navigate that, because it seems to be a very messy process and there's not going to be one answer to fix it all. So a lot of discussion on the different ways everybody was going at that. So, that's it.
Hi again. Again, it was my absolutely biggest pleasure and honor to be presenting for you this event where you were able to listen to other people. Some of you had opportunities to speak with other people. It should have been a great networking opportunity. And for those of you who are watching later at home, please look up the panelists, and I'm sure they'll be happy for you to reach out to them directly. And one of the takeaways for me was that it doesn't matter where you're teaching or working in St. Louis. We have very much similar obstacles and similar problems, and so it shouldn't be innovative to have a moment like this where we're all coming together to talk about similar solutions and to share these ideas. And so what I hope to see in the future is more collaboration and events like these where we can come to the table together, because we do share these problems, and it might be a national thing. Like, why don't we break silos beyond the geography? Why don't we get together over some virtual program and communicate with people who are having similar problems and try to solve things together? What I want to do is end this event perfectly on time with the wise words of our Associate Vice Chancellor for Employer Workforce Solutions, which is Dr. Rob Lee. Rob?
I was excited about talking until she said wise. So anyway, thank you everybody for participating today. This was really informative. The thing about AI is that it is, unlike, I'm a historian by training, it is the only technological revolution that permeates all corners of society instantly, every single day, and it's always changing. And I learned a term today, snapshot fallacy. Where's my guy? Back there. And depending on the moment you take your snapshot, this is either an existential threat or an existential opportunity. And so I think the thing for us, whether we are on the traditional academic side of the house or whether we are on the workforce training side of the house, is we have a responsibility to our students, but also to our fellow citizens, to teach literacy of AI, to teach awareness of AI. They may choose to opt out of it. That's fine. Good luck with that, but I don't know how, but you might choose to opt out of it. But at least if you are literate in it, if you are not afraid of it, if you know how it can be used as a tool rather than a replacement, then I think you will be more set for success. So I think more panels like this, more ongoing discussion, because I'm pretty sure if we held this again in 6 months, Sahar, where'd you go? In 6 months, a lot of these answers will have changed, or at least modified. And that's why we have to keep having these discussions. So thank you, everybody, for your time today. Thank you for your knowledge and your insight. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.